What if I told you this isn't just another historical epic, but Christopher Nolan's most ambitious movie ever? The first trailer for The Odyssey just dropped, and fans are already losing their minds. Some people are obsessed with the scale, others are debating the accents and language consistency, but one thing is clear, this movie looks massive. And if you thought this trailer was just random mythological imagery, trust me, almost every single shot is secretly adapting major moments from the original Greek epic. We're talking shipwrecks, monsters, prophecy, Troy's destruction, revenge, gods, betrayal, and Odysseus literally fighting his way home across a nightmare journey that lasted 2 decades. So today we're breaking down everything, every hidden detail, every mythology reference, every character reveal, and what Nolan might actually be changing from the original story. And fair warning, this breakdown contains potential spoilers for the movie and the original epic itself. So, with that said, let's break it all down. The trailer opens with our very first look at Odysseus, played by Matt Damon, lying on top of a shipwreck. Immediately, Nolan is setting the tone here. This isn't the triumphant king returning home. This is a completely broken man, a survivor, someone who has already lost almost everything. And while we see him stranded among the wreckage, we can hear the voice of Calypso in the background, played by Charlize Theron, asking him about who he really is. Then the trailer cuts to Odysseus walking across a beach filled with even more destroyed ships. Now, this scene actually connects to one of the biggest disasters from the original Odyssey story. At this point in the journey, Odysseus and his men are starving after years at sea. They eventually land on an island where sacred cattle belonging to the sun god Helios are being protected. And despite warnings not to touch them, Odysseus's crew kills the cattle and eats them anyway. Huge mistake, because those animals were sacred to Helios. And after hearing what happened, Zeus becomes absolutely furious and strikes Odysseus' ship with lightning. Every single crew member dies. The only survivor is Odysseus himself. That's why in the trailer he looks completely isolated and destroyed. He literally lost everyone. And after surviving the storm, he eventually washes ashore on the island of Ogygia, where Calypso finds him, which means Nolan might actually be starting the movie near the end of Odysseus' journey, and then telling the rest through flashbacks. And honestly, that makes perfect sense, because that's also very similar to how the original epic poem is structured. In the original Odyssey, Odysseus recounts his adventures while telling his story to the Phaeacians. But in Nolan's version, it looks like he may be telling the story directly to Calypso instead. And if that's true, then almost everything we see in this trailer could actually be memories, which is very Nolan. Then we hear Odysseus talking about his wife Penelope, played by Anne Hathaway. And right after that, we get our first look at his son Telemachus, played by Tom Holland. Now, this relationship is extremely important to the story, because when Odysseus left for the Trojan War, Telemachus was still a child. And by the time Odysseus finally returns home, nearly 20 years have passed. Think about that. A son growing up without his father for 2 entire decades. And that emotional damage is going to become a major part of this movie. Then, the trailer shifts into full Trojan War flashbacks. And for people unfamiliar with the mythology, here's the context. The Trojan War lasted around 10 years. The Greeks went to war after Helen, the wife of King Menelaus, was taken to Troy. Now, originally, one of Greece's greatest warriors was Achilles. But after Achilles dies, Odysseus becomes the mastermind behind the plan that ultimately wins the war, the Trojan horse. And yes, Nolan is absolutely teasing it here. Odysseus comes up with the idea of building a giant wooden horse and hiding elite Greek soldiers inside it. The Trojans believe it's a gift and bring it into the city. Then, at night, the soldiers emerge from inside the horse and completely destroy Troy from within. That's why throughout the trailer we keep seeing burning cities, collapsing structures, and massive war imagery. We even get shots of Agamemnon in massive armor, along with Menelaus, who's being played by Jon Bernthal. And honestly, Jon Bernthal as Menelaus feels perfect. The energy already matches. Then the trailer cuts back to Odysseus standing alone on the white beaches of Ogygia. Now, in the original story, Odysseus spends years trapped there with Calypso, and every single day, he stands by the shore crying while staring toward Ithaca, desperately wanting to return home. That emotional loneliness seems to be a huge focus of Nolan's version. This doesn't feel like a traditional fantasy movie, it feels psychological. Then we finally see Ithaca itself, and our first look at Antinous, played by Robert Pattinson. Now this is where things start getting dangerous, because while Odysseus has been gone for 20 years, over 100 suitors have invaded his palace, specifically 108 suitors. And their leader is Antinous, a manipulative, power-hungry man who wants both Odysseus' throne and his wife Penelope. That's why in the trailer we hear him saying, "This throne needs a ruler, and I want you to choose me." He's almost definitely talking to Penelope here, trying to pressure her into marriage. And then we see giant feasts taking place inside Ithaca, while these suitors basically live like kings inside Odysseus' own home. Then we get one of the most important scenes in the entire trailer, Penelope holding Odysseus' bow. Now this moment comes directly from the climax of the original Odyssey, when Odysseus finally returns home. The goddess Athena disguises him as a beggar so nobody recognizes him. Penelope secretly suspects this mysterious beggar might actually be her husband, so she creates a challenge. Whoever can string Odysseus' legendary bow and shoot an arrow through 12 axe heads will marry her. Every suitor fails, every single one. Then this random beggar walks up, effortlessly strings the bow, fires the arrow, and wins. And that is the moment Odysseus reveals himself. So this bow scene in the trailer, that's potentially teasing the movie's final act. Then we see Odysseus and his crew entering a cave filled with sheep. This is huge, because this is almost definitely the Cyclops sequence, specifically Polyphemus, the one-eyed son of Poseidon. During the journey, Odysseus and his men enter the cave searching for supplies. Instead, they find a giant cannibal monster. Polyphemus traps them inside and literally starts eating members of the crew. So Odysseus comes up with a plan. He manipulates the Cyclops, blinds him by stabbing his eye, and then escapes by hiding underneath sheep as they leave the cave. And that's exactly why the sheep are emphasized so heavily in the trailer shot. Nolan is absolutely adapting this sequence, and if he does it right, this could become one of the craziest scenes in the movie. Then we hear Telemachus asking, "What happens if Odysseus returns?" And this line is very important, because Antinous has spent years manipulating Telemachus psychologically. Remember, Telemachus barely even remembers his father, so Antinous constantly attacks Odysseus' legacy and tries convincing Telemachus to accept him instead, basically replacing Odysseus as the father figure of Ithaca, which makes this conflict deeply personal. Then we get a very mysterious shot of a man with glowing blue eyes and no visible pupils saying, "Someone will bring vengeance." This character is almost certainly Tiresias, a prophet from Greek mythology, and his role in the Odyssey is incredibly important. At one point, the witch Circe tells Odysseus he must travel into the Underworld itself to seek guidance from Tiresias. So Odysseus literally journeys to the land of the dead. And Tiresias is the one who warns him about the dangers ahead, including what has happened back in Ithaca. He's also the one who foretells vengeance against the suitors, which means Nolan is apparently including the Underworld storyline, and that is insane. Then we get another sequence that looks slightly different from the original books. Odysseus and his men are surrounded in a forest by giant armored warriors. This appears to be the Laestrygonians, a tribe of giant cannibals. In mythology, Odysseus arrives at the land of the Laestrygonians during his journey home, and things go horribly wrong. The giants destroy 11 of his 12 ships and massacre most of his remaining crew. Odysseus escapes with only one surviving ship, which explains why later in the trailer we only see him traveling with a tiny surviving crew. Then Antinous says he wants every member of a certain crew dead. This likely connects to Telemachus' sea voyage, because once Telemachus becomes older, Antinous realizes he's now a threat to the throne. So when Telemachus secretly sails away searching for information about his father, Antinous plans an ambush to kill him before he can return home. And earlier in the trailer, we actually do see Telemachus aboard a ship, so Nolan is definitely planting those story threads early. Then we return to Odysseus facing another massive storm at sea, and this sequence connects to Aeolus, the king of the winds. In mythology, Aeolus gives Odysseus a magical bag containing all the dangerous storm winds trapped inside. The idea is simple: keep the bag sealed, and favorable winds will safely guide the crew home to Ithaca, and for a while it actually works. Odysseus gets incredibly close to home, but then his crew becomes suspicious. They think the bag contains treasure or gold that Odysseus is hiding from them. So, while he sleeps, they open it, and instantly, violent storms explode out of the bag and send them all the way back across the sea, which is honestly one of the most frustrating moments in the entire Odyssey. They were so close to making it home. Then we get a quick montage of chaos, war, destruction, and Odysseus' endless suffering across his journey. And then comes another massive mythology moment, a shot showing Odysseus' ship near a giant whirlpool. This is Scylla and Charybdis, one of the deadliest sections of Odysseus' journey. On one side is Charybdis, a monstrous whirlpool capable of swallowing entire ships. On the other side is Scylla, a horrifying six-headed sea monster. So Odysseus is forced into an impossible choice: go near the whirlpool and risk losing everyone, or sail near Scylla and sacrifice some of his crew. And Odysseus chooses Scylla, which means Nolan is absolutely leaning into the darker moral dilemmas of the story. This isn't a perfect hero. This is a man constantly forced to choose between terrible outcomes. Then the trailer ends with more destruction from Troy and flashes of Odysseus' brutal journey. And honestly, this movie looks unbelievable. Because what makes the Odyssey so legendary isn't just the monsters or the battles. It's the fact that this is one of the oldest surviving works of literature and human history. The Odyssey was written around the 8th century BC in Homeric Greek, and now Christopher Nolan is adapting it into what might become one of the biggest cinematic events of the decade. And if there's one director crazy enough to turn Greek mythology into an emotional, psychological, large-scale cinematic experience, it's Nolan. So now I want to hear from you guys. What was your favorite moment from the trailer? Which mythology sequence are you most excited to see? The Cyclops, the Underworld, Troy, Scylla, and Charybdis? And do you think this could actually become Christopher Nolan's greatest movie yet? Drop your theories and thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications because we're going to be covering everything related to the Odyssey moving forward. Thanks for watching,